Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of Season 4, Let's Talk.
And it's interesting how I got my first comic is because no one gave it to me. I didn't go buy it. All right. First comic which actually fascinated me was the X-Men, and that one I got while I was traveling to Bangalore. So we used to have trips yearly once. I used to come to Bangalore, and this was just kept on the seat where I was sleeping, and that is how I actually got introduced to the Marvel comics.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy. And this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. Hey folks, welcome back to the Let's Talk series. And my guest today is also a teenage friend. Of course, aside from Amarnath, I met this person during my teenage years. This guy's a phenomenal guy. And we for from the time that I've met him over till today, we're still close. And he's also like a brother to me. So I want to introduce my guest today, Larsen. Hey pal, how you doing?
I'm good, Rajiv. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Anyway, before we get into the questions, I gotta ask, could you give a little bit of background about yourself to my listeners?
All right. Hello, listeners. My name is Larsen Raj, and I'm from India, and I work in a corporate field.
I gotta ask because you and I never had high school. We never grew up in the high school setting, unlike Amarnath. I gotta ask if you and I were
Yes.
classmates. Who were you in high
Mm-hmm.
school? Are you the guy who's Are you the guy in the backbench? Are you competitive, uh, the competitive bully, or are you the book smart kind of person? I gotta ask.
Well, to be frank, I was whatever you just mentioned. I'm none of that. I was just a silent student. But if
Yeah.
in case you were there in my school, we would have easily bonded.
Ah, interesting. Do you classify
It would have
yourself?
happened.
Do you classify yourself as an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert in that regard?
I'm more of an extrovert,
Really?
and yes, that's that. Well, to be frank, when I was in my school, I was an introvert. I didn't have much friends,
Hmm.
but after I came to Bangalore,
Hmm.
well, I used to study in somewhere in North India.
Hmm.
When I left North India and came to South India, that is Bangalore,
Hmm.
I became an extrovert.
Oh,
There was a
interesting.
drastic change, but yeah, that happened.
Interesting. Since you mentioned North India, I wanna open into that conversation. What's
All right.
the difference in because for me, I grew up when I was in India. I grew up in the Bangalore setting, which is of course the climate. Everything is different. The people was far different than the Philippines. I gotta ask, what's the
Exactly,
big
it was.
difference from transitioning to North India to South? What's that big major difference that could say, okay, that's North, and when you're in another area of India, okay, that's South. It's very South. That very distinctive identity.
All right. So let me just tell you an interesting fact
Hmm.
about India first.
Hmm.
No matter where you go in India, each and every single state or each and every single city
Hmm.
will have a history,
Oh.
and the culture that you have in that particular city is
Hmm.
always different. So each and every single time you move to a city or you travel through a city,
Hmm.
you have that opportunity to see new cultures and experience them. I think that is one of the best part that you have in India. So specifically talking about the places that I have stayed.
Hmm.
So well, I was in Uttar Pradesh. So there's a place called a city called Jhansi.
mm,
So if in case we deep dive into the history of India,
mm,
that is one of those cities where the War of Independence started. So you see, I was staying in a place where the War of Independence started, so that itself is a huge thing.
mm,
So if in case you just Google about Jhansi or the queen who was in Jhansi,
mm,
a lot of people will know about a lot of interesting facts and the historical moments that happened there, and then the cultures that the people have, the different type of cultures that you have.
mm,
So uh, the changes that I had in when I moved from North India to Southern India, first thing is of course the language. If in
mm.
case you see in India, there are a lot of languages that people speak.
Yeah,
It's not just one languages.
yeah.
So the main difference was the language,
Mm,
which I didn't know, and that was something which I had to learn.
mm.
So that happened, and then of course, as I mentioned, the culture. There's a drastic change in where I was and where I am right now.
Pal, I gotta say, I love this conversation. One thing is, I want to open this conversation to let's travel around India and let's specify because I've always been wanting to travel around India, and the only places that I've been, I think, uh, some of the stories that I've
Pondicherry.
told you in the past is that I've only been to Pondicherry, I've been to Chennai, Mahabalipuram, and I
Okay.
went to Mumbai for a short period, but that was because my dad had business there. He had to perform a particular thing, so I never really got through the city. Although it was an interesting adventure in the train, and me and my sister
Mm-hmm.
and my mother, we shared an amazing adventure in the trains. And there were a couple of places that I've been through in the outskirts of Bangalore. So I think in this conversation between you and me, pal, I wanna continue this journey through India, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna. I think we're gonna unravel a lot of stuff. But first of all, I wanna underline the fact that India has as mentioned by my guest, India is rich in culture and history and heritage, and the things that India has been through. I mean, is far more powerful, and its relevance to inspiration and motivation. People should see India as as an interesting, powerful country, not just in forms of ideology, but as well into application in life. So yeah,
Yep.
first of all, uh, where do you if you were to settle down, if you were to pinpoint a map in India, pal, I gotta ask, if you were to
Mm-hmm.
pinpoint, you were to
Okay.
throw a dart, and you want to hit India, where is the first place that you would really, if you had the capability, you would settle down, and why? I really want to understand that.
All right. I would actually love to get back to my place where I was born, which is Jhansi, of course.
Hmm,
So, since my dad was in the army, I was born and brought up there. And till the age of 16, I stayed there. So, we used to travel to Bangalore because, of course, our relatives are here. But
hmm,
the reason that I want to go back there is because the population in that city is
hmm,
not that much, all right. I will say it is just in few lakhs.
hmm,
And since uh, you have less people there, the bondage that you have with your neighbors and the bondage that you have with the people that you meet there, it's different. It's totally different there, because if in case you stay in a city where there are a lot of people there, you are just a person who is just walking in the street. No one will know you. No one is
hmm,
going to talk to you. No one is going to even say hi to you.
hmm,
So I think that is something which you have there, because you can actually meet a lot of people there. And to be frank, if in case you meet them even after a month or even after a year, they will
hmm,
still remember you. That is the best part that you have in the in Jhansi. And moreover, the place that I used to stay,
Hmm.
uh, I will say it was a bit different than where usually people stay because, of course, it is an army area,
Hmm.
and it was not just one culture which we had. We had
Hmm.
multiple cultures. So we had Tamilians, we have people
Hmm.
from Karnataka, we had people from Maharashtra, we had people from Bengal, we had people from Kashmir, we had people
Oh.
from Punjab. So you see, the
Hmm.
place that I was staying was filled with culture.
Hmm.
So I was born and brought up in a place where the culture was an important factor, but when it came to that particular profession that people were working in, they
Hmm.
were always unified. They always had that unity.
Hmm. That kind
That
of
is one of
makes
the main reasons
sense.
I want to get back to that place. Yeah.
That kind of
You see,
makes sense.
you'll have a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
So you just don't have that friendship. You have that bondage with people. So I still
Yeah.
remember, like, after coming to Bangalore, I went back to that place. Well,
Hmm.
to be frank, what happened was the regiment, well, it keeps on moving. It does not stay in one city. It moved
Hmm.
to another city, but when I went back to that regiment, it was in a different city in Haryana. So Haryana is also in North India and a
Yeah.
different state, of course. So when I met people there, they still
Huh.
remembered me. We still had that bondage. That was the best part,
Uh,
which you actually don't get in cities.
hmm. I like how you open this. I like how you open this to the power of inspiration and the form of unity that people saying. That's one thing rare in friendship, and I think that's yeah. That's I agree that home is where the heart is. I guess that's the sentence that you want to say in short. I guess.
Exactly. And of course, the best part that you have in
Hmm.
North India,
Hmm.
well, it is like people do like it, but people don't like it.
What do you
I'll
mean?
tell you exactly what I mean. The best part, I will differentiate it
Hmm.
like this, okay? The best part that you have in Bangalore is in one
Hmm.
single room, you can experience three climates, all right? Morning, it will be
Hmm.
cold. Afternoon, it will be
Yeah.
hot. It will
Yeah.
be like summer. And evening, it will be
Yeah.
just pouring. So you see that there are like three climates in just one day. So what I like about North
Yeah.
India is the climates are actually very constant. So you have summer, you have
Hmm.
winter, you have autumn, and you have the rainy seasons.
Hmm.
So when you experience that, I actually
Hmm.
experience a difference there because the best part that you can have is that Christmas can be celebrated in the winter. That is something that I did not
Hmm.
experience here. Christmas is actually like
Snow. Snow and everything.
it didn't have snow because we were not far north, but yeah, the cold it used to give
Yeah.
us chills. We had to sleep in like at least 2 3 blankets,
Ah.
so you can understand how cold it will be.
Oh. Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I do miss that.
Anyway, I wanna. I actually I'm a visual guy, and I'm sure I wanna visualize this. Could you paint me a picture of how it is in Jansi, and how the vision, if you were to paint it in a
Hmm.
more textual format,
Okay,
how would Jansi look like?
okay, let me just tell you how it. Okay, let me give it. I'm not sure if the case is gonna work, but let me give it a try. Um, think about
Yeah.
a lady holding her baby,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
in a cloth. Okay, she has tied her baby on her back with her
Hmm.
cloth, riding a horse
Hmm.
and fighting the Britishers.
Hmm.
Okay, and that is happening in a war field
Hmm.
near a fort.
Hmm.
Okay, you have the cantonment,
Okay.
you have the army. Okay, and then
Yeah.
you have the people, the culture that you have there.
Hmm.
You have a lot of historical
Hmm.
monuments. each and every single historical monument has a history. Each and every single hospitals, each and every single houses. And the houses, it is not made by Indians, it is made by Britishers. I'll make that clear here. Okay.
mm,
And you, if in case you go
mm,
to Jhansi, the first thing that you will see the minute you step out in the station is a big wall
mm,
painted uh,
mm.
with that war which started, the war of independence which started. So you will see that first. The the station itself has a lot of history in it. That if in case you talk to any single person there, you will get multiple stories because each and every single person who has been staying in Jhansi for a long time, they will know the history. I think that
Mm.
does that give you a clear picture?
Yeah, it
Let me
kinda
just
does.
help you
Kind.
out here. Okay,
Uh,
war,
mm,
the queen,
mm,
historical
mm.
monuments, people, market,
Okay.
the
Mm,
cantonment, and the army.
okay.
This is how I
Yeah.
would like to define it.
Kinda. Yeah, it is a beautiful picture.
But
Somewhat.
if in case you can,
Somewhat a beautiful.
exactly, if in case I
Yeah.
can, I will surely send you some pictures. I'm sure that I will be able to find it in Google.
Interesting. It's an interesting way to open up a conversation. You know, the history of Jansin.
Yeah, the history goes back.
And yeah. And let's move on from the past then. I mean, we opened the conversation in world history, and now let's move into the
Yeah.
present. Right now, in your level, of course, you mentioned you're a
Mhm.
corporate field, and and you are facing tough times.
Yes, sure.
I gotta ask you.
Hmm. Yeah.
I gotta ask you. At this point in time, uh, what made you who you are?
What made me who I am today? I think it
Yeah.
for me it mattered what surrounding that I was in. I was surrounded by people in uniform. So since my dad was in the army, I was in that environment. I was meeting people. I was meeting officers. I was meeting the soldiers. So I actually evolved in their field, right? The reason that I'm telling that I evolved in that field is because
Hmm.
I used to look at those people and I used to learn a lot of stuff. A disciplined life, people
Hmm.
following the rules and regulations, the procedures. Each and every single thing has a procedure. Doing things in a procedural way. But if in case you see people today, like most of the people, they always find shortcuts, but they don't understand that each and every single thing has a procedure and that has to be followed. And if in case you follow the procedures, that thing actually lasts long. But if in case you find a shortcut, it does not. So I am a patriotic person, all right. So it came from the environment that I was in. Since my dad was in the army, I developed in that in particular environment. I used to indulge in with the activities that they used to do. So one good opportunity that I always used to get was since I was there in that particular environment, they used to accept who I am. That is something that I don't see in every single places. They will accept you for what who you are, and they will actually look forward to meet you and develop you, even if in case it's been just one day. So that kind of bondage I had, and
Hmm.
if in case I talk about the bondage that I learned how to bond with people. So it is not just for if in case you see in corporate
Hmm.
fields, things are very different. All right, but
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
bondage you will not get it because people are very busy with their professional lives. So if in case I talk about my situation here, my scenario, I actually bond with my team, each and every single person who's there in the team. I bond with them. It is not just a professional life which matters for me.
Hmm.
It's also that bondage which matters, which actually helps me to grow. And to be frank, it is not just my growth, it is others' growth as well. So I am very caring towards individuals, right? I like helping people. If in case they are in a situation and there is something that I can do, I always take a step ahead and I tell them, you know what, I'm ready to face it with you. I'm ready to help you out. So I have that kind of like what I had, the view that I had before has been developed, I would say. A lot of things have
Mm.
developed. Professionally, yes, it has helped me a lot because what I what I like to tell is like, what, each and every single thing which is there in the corporate field or which is there in the world, it came from the army.
Mm.
And of course, in case you have learned the basics of what is there in the
True.
army, you can actually excel in your life because your the basement that you have is very strong. The base that you have made in your life, which is very strong, and it cannot break.
Interesting. I really it's fascinating.
I know.
It's fascinating how you open the depth of understanding that being in an army, of course, you have the discipline and thing.
Mm,
My next question derives from that context, the context of discipline and motivation. Is there a particular quote from the Indian Army or a quotation that you created that gets you up every day and say, "Hey, this is how I start the day by this quotation by so and so," or do you have your own particular quote?
all right, so the Indian army has a lot of quotations, to be frank, okay, but as the motto says, so with honor. And the people that who are in the army, they always go by one quote, which actually pushes them to
Hmm.
do what they have achieved in these last so many years. That is, live a life like ordinary. I think that is something that actually
Okay.
pushes me to be the person I am today, because to achieve a lot of things, if in case you have extraordinary life, you'll have stories to tell.
It's true because sometimes you, me, and Amarnath, once we get together,
I
is
know.
always endless. Sometimes we end up talking and saying around 12. There's one thing. There's one thing cool about us three. And the next question, the next question I got is now we spoke about the past. Yeah, we spoke about history. We spoke about the future. The present. And my next question is that what are your thoughts for the future now that things are transitioning? And you've mentioned earlier also that kids are into technology, but when I grew up, uh, getting TV time was already a pain in
It
the
is.
ass. I used to play with toys. I used to play with toys, and then whatever episode comes up at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, yeah, especially when growing up here, 5 p.m. we used to watch Power Rangers you know, and yeah. But here we have the technology, and now I think we're transitioning into a new era of seeing future. So, what are your thoughts for the future?
For the future, I think one thing I can assure you is that the surroundings, the technology that we have today, it will be developed, and we can't imagine how advanced it will be, because a lot of advancements are happening in the field of science, in the field of technology, and I think it is important for us as well to develop, but we have to make sure that we also know the pros and cons of that particular technology or that advancement, because if in case you
Hmm.
just take an example of the phones that we use right now, I think
Hmm.
people or the population that we have right now, it is they are addicted to phones and they are addicted to the screens, I will say. Not just phones, it is the screens. Let it be the
Hmm.
TV, let it be your
Hmm.
phone as well, let it be your laptop. You are actually stuck in one place. So there will
Hmm.
be a lot of advancements which we will be seeing in the future, but we have to make sure that we also train ourselves to be without the technology. So the reason that I say is because I have this one habit wherein I can stay without the phone. I what I do is I just keep my phone aside.
Same
I
here.
keep the technology away from me at least for one,
Same
two,
here.
2 hours. All right, I just keep it away. I just
Yeah.
it's just say let's just say I just have my own time there. Either I go for jogging, either I practice karate, so I do that. So keeping the technology away, it actually
Hmm.
helps you because there are a lot of issues that are there if in case you get addicted to your phone. Just imagine if let me just give you an
Hmm.
example here. Just imagine you don't have electricity for whole 2 days and you don't have charge in your phone.
Hmm.
You don't have any mode
Hmm.
of power. What are you going to do about it?
Hmm.
Can you survive that day? Can you survive those 2 days?
That's a good. That's a good idea.
Mhm,
But the contrary of those that not really live off of social media.
mhm,
One thing is, I do agree that some people can survive. Granted that when we're talking about future, things happen in the future that is associated with social media. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
I will agree with
There are a
you.
lot of people who work online.
Mhm,
Social media manager who are supporting, let's say, the big guys, the big
all
cats.
right.
Art actors, actress. They don't have time for social media, so they have guys. You the social media guys, so they have to check all the social media. They have to follow the trends. They have to keep reporting to saying their marketing thing. So it's kind of yes and a no,
Mhm,
for that in terms of survival.
okay.
But I do agree in the discipline and the stuff that usage. If you're using it for the right reasons, then probably I do agree that you're using it for the right reasons, such as business, networking, in order to diversify what you have as business,
Mhm,
investment, learning, and growing. Probably, I disagree to the fact that you don't you need to disassociate yourself. But on the contrary, if you're using it for the sake of entertainment, just to get you off from a hard working day, then yeah, I'd prefer, uh
being
probably
old school.
probably doing something else. Probably, yeah, playing basketball, but probably doing something else, updating a skill that is irrelevant to sing. But then again, you know, you cannot really update your skill unless you Google it or you YouTube it. So
That is
yeah,
for sure because if in case you see now, I have been YouTubing a lot. Recently, I wanted to buy something for myself.
yeah,
I want to buy technology, and you know what I did? I just Googled it. You know what? I want this kind of laptop.
yeah,
What are you going to help me? So Google helped me. So yes,
yeah.
I will say
Yeah, it's funny. You can't really escape that,
you can't. You surely can't.
Is the conversation nowadays with parents and kids is like, Dad, how do I build this model rocket? I don't know. Just Google that thing. I don't
Just
care.
wait, you'll get it. You'll get an answer. It's not just one
Yeah.
answer though, but you'll have multiple
Yeah.
answers there. So of course,
Yeah. That's the overwhelming part.
so of
That's
course,
the
one
one
thing is
thing.
that you know what you can't deny to the fact that people now it we have to live with technology. If in case you see my work, I am working from home right now
Hmm.
because of this pandemic. All right. If in case I didn't have an internet,
Hmm.
if in case I
Yeah.
didn't have a laptop, I'm sure that I wouldn't have worked. All
Hmm.
right. I would have been in office now working.
Yeah. You.
So of course, technology is important,
Yeah.
but I think we have to make
Mm.
sure we keep it in that particular place. We don't give it so much of importance that it just takes over your life, because that is happening in a lot of places. But yes, I will accept the fact that we will need a technology in the future and advancements will be there. And a lot of things are actually converting to the online portal. So, of course, the advancements that we'll be seeing in the future is going to be next level.
Mm.
It will be.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do agree.
And who knows that next thing I'll be talking to Rajiv, who has put his hands in a robot or something. I'm sure that you have seen the sci-fi movies.
AI.
AI, yes, exactly. Your conscience into an
Yeah.
AI. That'll be good.
There's this interesting quotation by Neil deGrasse
Uh-huh.
Tyson about um, science fiction. I'm sure you mentioned, yeah, you've opened another Pandora's box. It's funny. Every conversation you always open a Pandora's box, but this one is very specific, and this is actually very deep in its essence because there's this idea that the main concept of science fiction, not friction, science fiction is that science fiction
Mhm.
is made to envision the
Uh-huh,
future.
yes.
But Neil deGrasse Tyson states that science fiction is also made to make sure that the future won't be as scary as it is predicted to be. I don't know if you got the
So
context
it
of that.
won't be scary as it is predicted to be.
Yeah. No, in the context of that, of what he
Mm-hmm.
meant is that we you mentioned, as again you mentioned, science fiction. You mentioned the
Yes.
future. Yeah, the future, the possibility of that is the future. The possibility of that
Mm-hmm.
happening is possible by the idea of the one who created the fiction, the
Uh-huh.
idea. Flying cars and all that
All right.
stuff. That was created by someone.
Uh,
But what are the
mhm.
odds that, of course, in the near in the science fiction movies or the science fiction novels that we've seen throughout time, there is something about it that can challenge the mind in such a way that if we create this particular
Mm-hmm.
technology,
Yes.
it is possible that we are going to doom ourselves in the future, granted that we did not we read it off of science
Well,
fiction.
that
I don't know if you meant what you
well,
understood what I
that is
said.
an interesting fact.
It's an interesting conversation. We went from Indian history up north, and now we're in the technology. This opening a lot of
From
boxes right
past to the
here.
future.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, before we get into my favorite topic, of course, the music
Mm-hmm.
segment, we're gonna have a
All right.
short break, and folks, we will be right back after the short break. This episode is sponsored by Dulce House, the online shop for your guilty pleasure. Use the promo code PIPE to buy chocolate chip cookies, Oreo cheesecake cookies, and other baking goodies. The promo code is PIPE. Go to the link in the description to find out more.
Catch the Pizarra Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by James Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hey, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. And amazing conversation we had here with my buddy Larsen from India. Of course, he's from Jhansi, and then he migrated to Bangalore. And we're going to talk about some interesting stuff here. We're going to talk about my favorite segment, which is, of course, uh, art. And we're going to transition into many other segments in this conversation. First of all, I know from experience my friend Larsen is a huge comic book fan. Does he agree?
I do agree.
Yeah. It's just that between him and I, I spent a handful of days studying the art, studying the artist, and of course, I've had a handful of conversations with some few artists and some few hobbyists as well who do drawings and stuff in the Let's Talk series. I gotta ask, when you picked up your first comic, what is that the first thing? What is the first thing that you have in mind that gets your attention?
Interesting. Okay, so how I started loving comics.
Hmm.
Let me answer you that first, okay?
Yeah.
So, from my childhood, all right, I grew up seeing superhero movies. Let's see, Batman, Spider-Man, Superman. So my dad used to like this was the time when you didn't have CDs or DVDs or you were not able you didn't have internet as well.
Hmm.
So we used to get the VCRs. So my dad used to get the superhero movies and I used to watch them. So it was really fascinating to see how the comics were converted to movies.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how I got my first comic is because no one gave it to me. I didn't go buy it.
Hmm.
All right. First comic which actually fascinated me was the X-Men, and that one I got while I was traveling to Bangalore.
Hmm.
So we used to have trips yearly once where I used to come to Bangalore,
Hmm.
and this was just kept on the seat where I was sleeping,
Hmm.
and that is how I actually got introduced to the Marvel comics.
Okay.
And previously, yes, my dad used to get some comics, the other ones which were, I'm sorry, have you heard of Phantom?
Phantom, yeah,
The Phantom comic?
the purple guy.
Yeah, the purple superhero. The
Yeah.
purple superhero in the who stays in the forest. That
Hmm.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Phantom and Tintin. My dad had a collection of Phantom and Tintin. So the first introduction was through my dad,
Hmm.
and then I got interested in Marvel
Hmm.
when I got that first X-Men comic that was in the train. So the most fascinating part was that when just read it,
Hmm.
I it was like I'm watching a movie. So it's not just like you're just reading something and you just see pictures and all.
Yeah.
So when I'm reading it, actually the characters that are in the comic they actually came to life. Okay,
Hmm.
not actually, but metaphorically.
Hmm.
So the most fascinating part of a comic is that whenever you're reading it, it always comes to life. It's the story that matters. It is the editor that matters. The kind of pictures which are there and the kind of dialogues that people put in.
Hmm.
There are so many things involved. It's not just like someone is drawing it and you're just putting words and sentences there. It is like almost similar to what you do in a movie. So you have a lot of procedures which has to be followed to have a successful comic. And to be frank, that is when I got introduced to Marvel and I just loved it.
Hmm. Interesting.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Because my fair share of comics, for me, one thing that
Mhm.
I'm fascinated with the idea of comics is that, of course, I had my fair share of drawings and stuff like that, and the stories. The first time I saw a comic book,
Mhm.
someone drawing a comic book. This was I don't think I've mentioned this in any of my podcast episodes, and this is featured in this conversation. Is that I had a friend who had
Okay.
this skill, this amazing skill. It's funny you mentioned X Men. I was fascinated by X Men then also, but back then it was more of the X Men Evolution cartoon series, I think.
Yes.
And when that happened, of course I was fascinated. I wanted to draw Nightcrawler, I wanted to draw Cyclops, I wanted to draw all these guys, but I couldn't. I was only, at that time I used to draw stick figures, and that was the only thing. And then this classmate of mine. Shout out to him if he's actually tuning into this podcast. Jean Paulo from the Philippines. Is that
Mhm.
we he showed me. You know, the funny thing was he was his the way he drew the characters. It was, you know, he drew it so elegantly and so simplistic, and that's when, oh man, that's how I wish I could do. I could be good as that. And then yeah, I mean the fascination began
Mhm.
there, and then of course my fair share of comic books began, and I started drawing and drawing and drawing. My obsession with drawing and creating began there. And then, of course, in the conversation with Amarnath in his episode, he and I collaborated in a comic that is somewhere. The comic book is still somewhere out there. But yeah,
The one
that's the
which you
group.
showed me.
Yes, yes, I think so. And that's where
Uh,
the
I.
fascination for comics began. During the last years, I had so much time. It was a time of isolation, and it was the most creative period of my life because I really am grateful for, because of the ability to do the research that I could, and acquire the knowledge prior to the
Mhm.
beginning
Yes.
of the TV shows and the popularity of the MCU. I was more into the characters that were built
Comics.
yeah, the characters that were built in the literature. It's funny, I keep schooling you every every time we have a conversation, you know. And I keep reminding you that, you know, pal, you need to read the stories first in order to understand the logic behind it, because the intention of each story has its own realism in the form of what the writer expresses it. And of course, in this
True.
day and age that we have, in this present day and age, is that
Mhm.
we are always we have to be more what's this more mindful of what we create, especially in the movies. You know, there are a lot of movies nowadays that
Mhm.
have rated SPG, so there are a lot of storylines there. In my thing, um, I'm not dissing movies. I mean, I have my fair share of times where I go out and watch movies, comic book adaptation. But I'm not fascinated by how they're
Mhm.
doing
Yes.
it in terms of how they're true to the comics. I mean, my favorite my favorite movie, I mean to say, is that some people might not like it, is the BVS, Batman versus Superman. I think I had a conversation with Riley as well. I'm a huge Batman versus Superman because one
Okay.
is the Frank Miller Batman. I'm sure you're aware of that. I think you and I had a conversation about Frank Miller's
Yes.
Batman.
Yes. Yes.
That kind of Batman
Mhm. I
embodied
think we
by
were fighting about it.
yeah, that thing about Ben Affleck's portrayal is so much powerful than it is. I mean, when I was I think when I was watching that, I think that was the day of my birthday when it was released. And so I think it was the day before or after my birthday.
Mhm.
And I was with a friend, and we saw the movie, and then Ben Affleck's portrayal as Bruce Wayne, he really embodied that character that Frank Miller did. And for me, I've read the graphic novel, and um, they also did that animation, 2D animation of that story. So in that
All right.
adaptation, when they made it more realistic, I was like, I'm a believer that the Ben Affleck thing was saying. And that's my fascination for live action, is how Zack Snyder's visual capacity and how he makes things, like you're saying. I'm a big fan of the movies. I kid you not. But I am also true to the books, because the books have more deeper meaning, and that's my
Exactly.
fascination.
Yes.
And yeah, I always, I mean, I always enjoy schooling you with things from the comic book. Every time you ask me a question, that's the one thing fascinating. You know, you ask me a
Well, you are the
question.
expert, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You
But
are the
yeah,
expert, pal.
I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm still learning. I mean, the comic book realm is one amazing universe where you can get lost in. Believe me, it's not as simple as back in the golden age. And I'm sure you're a fan of all ages. Basically, there are a lot of eras. Stanley's era was
Of course.
the Silver Age. The golden era was the
Mm-hmm.
creation of Superman, and then when Superman was created, uh, many that's I think Superman was the first superhero that was created in the United States, and this was I think
Yes.
post World War II. The brother, the Jerry's and saying I forgot their names, but yeah, when they came
Mm-hmm.
up with the character, it was the most powerful superhero. And it's funny that once they started coming up with different knockoff of Superman, it was like deteriorating. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yes.
90s era, I think I told you this, that the 90s era comics started deteriorating because they were overproducing in terms of quantity, and the quality of the stories were going down. So yeah.
There were a lot of differences actually. Once the it started, what
Hmm.
happened was there was a lot of advancements which happened in comics as well. There
Yeah.
were a lot of developments. Each and every single story were different. Each and every single, if in case you see the even the suits were changed a lot
Yeah.
of times, isn't it?
Yeah.
So each and every single person have a different story, and they just like to show it in their own way.
I gotta ask though, this is
But
a
yes, one
very
thing, the classic ones can never change.
oh yeah, yeah. I gotta ask though, this is one thing that I'm sure you're
Hmm.
aware of is the multiverse theory.
The multiverse theory, yes, I am aware of that.
Yeah. In the multiverse theory, what are your thoughts about it? See, I'll give my opinion later, but I want to really know what are your thoughts about the multiverse, both Marvel and DC multiverse theory. What are your thoughts? Confusing, interesting, happy, sad? You want a straightforward storytelling, or you just want to be oversaturated by so many things that's going on? What are your thoughts?
That's a tough question, to be frank.
Hmm.
All right. About the multiverse, it's very fascinating because another world,
Hmm.
that is something which is according to our knowledge and according to our the advancements that we have known or the technology that we have or stories that we have heard. I think right now it is not possible.
Hmm.
But a lot of people, a lot of individuals, they actually tell that, you know what, there is a possibility that there might be a multiverse.
Hmm.
And if in case you see in comics, comics develop each and every single time there is an technological advancement.
Hmm.
This I have seen. For example, if in case you see Spider-Man, before Spider-Man's web used to come out of his body. But now if in case you see he uses technology.
Yeah.
So I think things are changing there. So multiverse, it's a fascinating topic. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And if in case there is another Larsen in another Earth, I would like to meet him. Yes,
That'll be interesting, right? I know, right? Anyway,
it will
before
be.
I get into what I'm gonna say, one thing is fascinating about the multiverse theory is that in the earlier golden era, I mean, from the transition from the golden era, we were accustomed to
Mhm.
superheroes being Superman, Batman, and all that stuff. They were built from the characters that they were made of. And this is a little bit of history lesson. This is
And they were always
basically
supposed to be good, isn't it?
no, I mean it's not really about being good. This is a little bit of
Hmm.
background for those who are listening, and we're talking about comics. This conversation is how I conversate with Larson on a daily basis when it comes to him learning about this thing. I'm sure he agrees with me. And the
He
idea
never gets
here,
old.
yeah, the idea here is that when the multiverse theory was created, it was created during the Silver Age because one is that when I want to highlight DC because DC is much more of my forte than Marvel. When
Marvel.
the first League of Superheroes, Superman, Batman, and the Justice League was created, of course, that their origins were built off of the starting point, how Superman was created. We all know the origins. Batman's create how Batman was created. Yeah, And then when the era of the Speedster, the Scarlet Speedster, which we all know is the Flash, of course, at that time, the
Yes.
Flash was not Barry Allen. In the Silver Age, it was Jay Garrick. Jay Garrick was the first one. He was
Yes.
the first Flash. And then the beginning of the multiverse began in the idea of the speedster, how the speed force, if the speed force is manipulated, it creates uh,
Mm-hmm.
it
A
creates this
portal.
interesting dynamic that transports uh, Flash into another dimension, which is of course the multiverse theory. And then of course there
Yes.
were every every certain time, in order for eh, the one thing that I my mixed emotions behind the idea of multiverse theory is that it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting concept to create, because one is you have parallel universes, but the only thing that
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that is saying is that when a writer comes up with a particular character, let's say he wants to play with the character of Superman, and then he wants to make Superman bad, he makes it so easy that he doesn't use Earth Prime Superman. Instead, he creates another Superman from Earth 1000 something something. So it makes it much easier for the writer to pick up another planet and then say, that's where Superman is gonna sing. And that's, I don't know. To me personally, it looks like it's I don't want to use the word lazy, but it's an more convenient, I guess, convenient way of how sing.
I think it is in convenient way. Yes, it is because the main reason is that you don't have to build another story there.
Yeah,
You can just go another, or you know what, there's the whole thing is opposite there. So people
yeah,
can actually visualize that, you know what, if in case
yeah,
something is happening, but yeah, that's not happening there. So it's just the opposite of it.
yeah. And it doesn't really, one problem also about that, it doesn't continue to the main canon, you know. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This comic conversation, that this is basically how we talk on a daily basis, sometimes on a daily basis about sing. But
Yes,
that's
yes.
just a snippet, folks, of how we talk, how I educate my pal Larson. I want to shout out. I think, yeah, Larson and I are gonna give a little bit of shout out to Amarnath for being a phenomenal guest on the second
Yay.
series. Pal, shout out to you, Amar, if you're tuning in and you've already reached this point of the conversation. We This is how we are, all three of us, when we're having a beer. Sometimes we have beer, we sit down and we have a conversation. This is how it is. Anyway,
Right.
uh pal, if someone wants to connect with you via social media, how do they find you on social media?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and I am very much active on Instagram.
Hmm.
All right. And listeners, if in case you would like to message me or tweet me, you can search Larsen underscore Raj. That is LARSEN underscore RAJ. That is my Instagram ID. And if in case you wish to message me on Facebook, you can just search Larsen Raj in the friend list of Rajiv Doreswamy. I'm sure that will be very easy for you all to get me.
Yeah.
So that is my yes, that's about Facebook. And if in case you want to tweet me in Twitter, you can just search Larsen.Raj. So you'll be able to find it.
Awesome. Awesome.
And yes, yes, just correction there. It is at Larsen underscore Raj in Twitter.
All right. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Anyway, pal, as always, it's nice to catch up with you again. It's nice to hear your voice, and it's amazing conversation that we had. It's phenomenal having you as my guest here in the Rajiv Show. Thank you so much for being a guest here in the Rajiv Show.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I think, well, I was excited for this because it's my first podcast, and this is gonna be tuned online, and that too, not nationally, internationally. So yes, I am excited about it, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to open it about so many things that I We used to have these discussions, yes. So I think yes. Thank you for giving this opportunity, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping someday
Mm-hmm.
that you, me, and Amarnath would share a season together. That'll be an interesting. Will we talk about anything
So
under the sun? That would be a fascinating. With that in mind, thank you for those who are listening. Cheers, folks. I will see you in the next episode.